Today we're going to talk about DNA and RNA, and we're going to compare them. The goal is to identify the parts of a nucleotide and describe some of the similarities and differences between DNA and RNA. So let's start by talking about the structure of a nucleotide. Nucleotides are the building blocks of nucleic acids, and nucleotides have three parts, and you can see each one of these in the picture. There's a sugar, a phosphate, and a base. The sugar contains 5 carbons. So the first carbon connects to the nitrogenous base. The second carbon, third carbon, fourth carbon, and fifth carbon are labeled the way that I have them in the picture there. Now, the sugar in DNA is called deoxyribose, and the sugar in RNA is called ribose. So DNA and RNA have different sugars in them. And you can actually see why DNA has its name. If you compare deoxyribose and ribose, you'll notice that deoxyribose is missing an oxygen, and that's where the deoxy part of the name comes from. It's lacking an oxygen. Okay, continuing the structure of the nucleotide here, there are 5 different kinds of bases found in nucleotides. So a moment ago, I told you about the sugars. Now we're going to talk about the bases. So there's 5 different kinds of bases found in nucleotides. There's adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, and uracil. And we abbreviate these with the first letter of the word. So there's A's, G's, C's, T's, and U's. Those are the 5 different kinds of bases. You'll notice in the picture here that A and G have 2 rings. So one ring is shaped like a hexagon and the other's a pentagon for both of these. So they're made up of a structure that's got these 2 rings, and this 2-ring structure, we call those purines. So A and G are both purines. Now, cytosine, thymine, and uracil, C, T, and U, those are made out of only 1 ring, and we call those pyrimidines. DNA contains these 4 bases in its nucleotides. It contains A's, G's, C's, and T's. But RNA contains 4 bases as well, A's, G's, C's, and U's. So the difference between the bases in DNA and RNA is DNA uses a T while RNA uses a U. The other bases are the same. Okay, now that we've talked about the structure of a nucleotide, remember nucleotides are made out of a phosphate, a sugar, and a base. We talked about the 2 different sugars, and we talked about the 5 different bases. Now we're going to talk about the structure of DNA. So DNA consists of 2 strands, and they're linked together to form a double helix. And a double helix is just a twisted ladder shape. So here, to help you visualize it, I've shown you what the ladder looks like. Okay, now the steps to the ladder are 2 bases. So you have a C and a G. They form the step of the ladder here. You have an A and a T. They form the step of the ladder there. So you put 2 bases together and they form the steps of a ladder, and those bases are held together by hydrogen bonds. That's what these little red lines are. 3 hydrogen bonds always form between C's and G's. So you see another G and C right here. There's 3 bonds there, 3 lines. 2 hydrogen bonds always form between A and T. So you see it, 2 lines forming there, 2 lines forming there. Now, when bases pair up to form these steps, there's some rules that they always follow. A pairs with T, and the way that you can remember that is with this little phrase, apples in a tree. And the base G always pairs with the base C. So G pairs with C, and the way that you might remember that is a car in a garage. Okay, now the sides, I told you about the steps of the ladder, but the sides of the ladder, and usually people don't call it the sides of the ladder, they call it the backbone of DNA. So if you hear me say backbone, I'm talking about the sides of the ladder. The sides of the ladder are made up of alternating sugar and phosphate molecules. So this little circle that represents the phosphate, and and then here's our sugar, and it alternates. It goes phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar, and so on. And here on the left, I have a strand of nucleotides, and on the right, I have a strand of nucleotides. And these are anti-parallel because they run in opposite directions. So to explain this, we need to label those carbons again like we did on the first slide in this video. So remember that fifth carbon connects to the phosphate group. So this dot here represents that fifth carbon. And the third carbon would be right here. So remember, the first is always what connects to the base. So this would be 1, 2, the third one would be right here. So this strand has the fifth carbon on top and the third carbon on the bottom. So that gives this strand a kind of direction. If you're moving from the fifth to the third, that gives it a kind of direction. But now look at the other strand. We can label the fifth carbon and the third carbon in that strand. So the fifth carbon would be right here. It connects to this phosphate. And the third carbon would be right there. Again, the first connects to the base. So here would be 1. There's 2. There's 3. So you'll notice these are opposite of one another. 5 was on the top here and 3 was at the bottom. But now 3 is at the top and 5 is at the bottom on the other strand. So this is why I say these run in opposite directions. And there's a word for that. It's anti-parallel. So the two strands of the DNA are anti-parallel. And something in real life that's anti-parallel, to help you kind of think about this, is a highway. On one side, there's cars driving on the right side of the road, and then there's cars driving on the other side of the highway. So a highway is an example of something that is anti-parallel. Okay, so that was the structure of DNA. Let's finish up by talking about the structure of RNA. So RNA stands for ribonucleic acid, and RNA plays a major role in protein synthesis, which is how proteins get made in the cell. Now, RNA consists of just one strand. DNA consisted of 2 strands, but RNA consists of only 1. And you can see that one strand in this picture. Now, there are 3 types of RNA. There's mRNA. The M stands for messenger. So there's messenger RNA. There's also rRNA, which stands for ribosomal RNA. And then there's tRNA, which stands for transfer RNA. So these are 3 types of RNA in the cell. And let me briefly tell you what each one does. So mRNA copies genetic instructions that's in the DNA, and it carries those instructions outside the nucleus. rRNA is what ribosomes are made out of, and ribosomes are the organelle where proteins get made. And then tRNA is responsible for bringing amino acids to the ribosome, and those amino acids will get joined there to make proteins. So, to sum up, we've talked about the structure of a nucleotide, the structure of DNA, and the structure of RNA.